And with that, I would now like to formally begin today's conference and introduce the chair of the National Women's Business Council, Carla Harris.
Thank you so much, Colin. Welcome to the National Women's Business Council quarterly public meeting. My name is Carla Harris, and I'm the chair of the National Women's Business Council. I am just thrilled to kick off today's meeting. I know I speak on behalf of the entire council when I say we are happy that you are joining us today, particularly about our important topic that we'll have in our panel. Today's webinar will include updates from the council, and then we'll have lined up, as I've alluded to, an amazing set of panelists for a vibrant discussion on venture capital and women titled Spreading the Wealth, Getting Venture Capital to Women Entrepreneurs. This panel supports one of the National Women's Business Council's important pillars, access to capital. This meeting is now officially called to order at 2:04 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Let's start with our official roll call of the council members. Please say present when I call your name. Marsha Bailey?
Present.
Rosanna Pivotera Biondo?
Present.
Kimberly Blackwell?
Present.
Carrie Warburg Block? Shelley Kapoor Collins?
Present.
Marsha Firestone?
Present.
Dr. Teresa Nelson?
Present.
Pam Prince Eason?
Present.
Magdala Racine Silva?
Present.
Deborah Rosado Shaw?
Present.
Ann Shabunko Moore?
Present.
Laura Yamanaka?
Present.
Sherry Stewart Deutschman?
Present.
And Whitney Keys.
Present.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your National Women's Business Council, and thank you all for participating today. Before we move forward, I would like to formally introduce our two newest members of the council, which you just heard from, Sherry Stewart Deutschman and Whitney Keys. Both have joined the council since our last public meeting in Austin, Texas in June. Sherry is the founder and CEO of LetterLogic, Inc. It's a multi-channel patient communications company located in Nashville, Tennessee. Since the company was founded in Sherry's basement in 2002, the company has become a $36 million company and has been named an Inc. 5000 company for 9 consecutive years. Sherry attributes the success of LetterLogic to its unique employee-centric culture, wherein the employee, not the customer, comes first. That culture has led the company to be recognized by the New York Times, Forbes magazine, Business Leaders, Inc., Fast Company, and E&Y. Whitney Keys is the founder of Whitney Keys Production and an award-winning American television host, speaker, and writer. Keys is currently an adjunct professor of global reputation management at Seattle University and a fellow of the Center for Strategic Communications. She has also been featured in Forbes, Fast Company, ABC News, The Huffington Post, Business News Daily, and NPR. She is a strong advocate and spokesperson and even served as the City Council advocate for small business. Sherry and Whitney, you are both incredibly accomplished women and will bring a wealth of experience to the council. Welcome again to the council, and welcome to your inaugural council meeting.
Thank you.
In a moment, I will turn it over to my fellow council members, Laura Yamanaka, Kim Blackwell, and Magdala Racine Silva, for some brief updates on our newest data findings and our research and communications efforts. In the second half of the meeting, we will be joined by a panel of experts, including business leaders and venture capital fund managers, to discuss how we can change the game for women and venture capital, mainly how to get more venture capital to women. At the end of both the updates and the panel, we'll hold some time to hear from you, as we always do. We'll have questions after our updates and questions after the panel. And a quick reminder, as you are listening, please feel free to use the hashtag #ChangeTheGame on Twitter and Facebook. And also, our Twitter handle is @NWBC, and we can be found on Facebook at NWBC.gov. Before we move into the updates, I want to share with you a video introducing the council. Samita?
If someone said to me that women did not want to start their own businesses, the first response would be, what planet are you living on? Because if you think about the fastest segment of entrepreneurship in this country over the last 5 years, and frankly over the last decade, it's been women-owned businesses.
We're relatively new to the game. The council was only created in 1988. Prior to that, we had to get a male signature to co-sign for any kind of loan.
The National Women's Business Council is a consultative body to the White House, the SBA, and to Congress on issues as they relate to women entrepreneurs and women-led companies.
We try to provide a source of information through research as well as toolkits
around issues that impact women-owned businesses and their obstacles to growth.
We're helping women business owners, and actually all small business owners, be more successful. We're helping grow the economy.
The greatest barrier for women today with respect to entrepreneurship continues to be access to capital.
Women continue to need specialized programs and services that really target their unique challenges in the business arena.
And what the NWBC has done in its focus is to make sure that we are bringing together collective voices that can help advocate on how we level the playing field.
The National Women's Business Council plays a very important role in the ecosystem of entrepreneurs and of job creation in this country. Our job is to look at data and actually to conduct research that would hopefully influence and affect policy as it relates to women entrepreneurs.
There's a lot of resources out there that the council is acting as a reference point. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel or do it ourselves, but really leverage the great work that's being done all across the nation by different organizations and people.
If you need information about how to grow your business, if you are thinking about starting a business, if you would like to understand the policies that are currently being deliberated that might affect you as a woman entrepreneur.
We travel the country with forums, collectives, and so forth, public meetings, and you don't have to be in DC to attend. You can dial in. Again, keeping posted to all of the council activities at nwbc.gov, and then enlist others. You know, this is a growing network, and as I mentioned before, with it being the fastest growing segment, we are a force to be reckoned with.
Thank you, ladies. This is your National Women's Business Council.
Created to serve as an independent source of advice and counsel to the President, Congress, and the U.S. Small Business Administration on issues of impact and importance to aspiring and current women business owners and leaders, as you just heard. It's the Council's job to equip the nation's decision makers, public and private, with policy recommendations that will impact and improve the business climate for women in our country. We do this by producing best-in-class research on the most relevant issues facing current and aspiring women business owners and leaders. Our hope is to use compelling, rigorous research to incite action and build bridges to support women's entrepreneurial ambitions and endeavors. Data is the foundation, and from that, we can make the most effective interventions and recommendations to our primary customers. Accordingly, the Council has had early access to the U.S. Census Bureau Survey of Business Owners. The SBO is the only comprehensive, regularly collected source of information on selected economic and demographic characteristics for businesses and business owners by gender, ethnicity, race, and veteran status. The data is compiled by combining data collected on businesses and business owners in the SBO with data collected on the main economic census. Hello? Hello?
Just a reminder to all those on the speaker line, if you aren't speaking, just to keep your phone muted just so we can minimize background noise. Sorry about that, Carla. You can continue.
Okay. Data have been collected every 5 years since 1972 for years ending in 2 and 7 as part of the economic census. The program began as a special project for minority-owned businesses in 1969 and was incorporated into the economic census in 1972, along with the survey of women-owned businesses. The census released the preliminary data from the 2012 survey just last month, and I am pleased to report that the numbers are even better than expected. Women's entrepreneurship is growing and getting stronger. Here are the facts. In 2007, there were 7.8 million women-owned businesses in the United States, which was a 20.1 increase from the period 2002 to 2007. As of 2012, there are 9.9 million women-owned businesses, reflecting a 27.5% increase from 2007 to 2012. Women-owned firms currently make up 36.2% of all non-farm businesses. That's up from 29.6% in 2007. Women-owned businesses generate $1.6 trillion in total receipts, up from $1.2 trillion in 2007, which is an increase of 35%. In comparison, male-owned businesses saw an increase of 33%. There are 89.4% of all women-owned firms with no employees but the owner. In terms of employment, 10.6% of all women-owned firms are employer firms, a slightly smaller proportion in 2007, but still these firms accounted for an increase of 143,000 women-owned employer firms in the 5-year period. These women-owned employer firms employ 8.9 million people with receipts of $1.4 trillion. The increase in employees of women-owned firms is an increase of 19.5%. For comparison, the increase in men-owned businesses was only 11.5%. We're looking at 2.1 million more women-owned businesses in 2012 than 2007, and almost 1.5 million more jobs since 2007. Exemplary, especially given the financial services crisis over that period of time. Based on our conversations and convening with women business owners, we are not surprised by these numbers. What we know through our research and our convenings and what we have observed around the country is that women business owners are committed, talented, and investing in their community, and they are taking advantage of what we like to call a perfect storm for entrepreneurship right now, including low interest rates, a diversity of capital and emerging sources, local support, and more. While there is much to celebrate, we are still far from parity in numbers of business and revenue. As such, our hope is to use these numbers to affirm the importance of investing in women and identify opportunities for policy recommendations that will continue to stimulate business growth for women entrepreneurs so that women entrepreneurs can successfully start and scale their businesses. I will now turn it over to my partner, Laura Yamanaka, the chair of our Research and Policy Committee, to talk about how we are building on this work and will continue to do so in the months ahead. Laura?
Thank you, Carla. With this new SBO data, the Council focused specifically on synthesizing the numbers regarding women business owners to create and release a new set of fact sheets. We know how hard it can be to read the raw data, and many times we don't have the time to do so. So please go to the nwbc.gov website and check out our updated fact sheets on general women business ownership, Black, Latina, Asian, and veteran women's business ownership, and the key gender differences by state in women's business ownership. Carla only shared the top lines in our opening address, but you can get more details about the numbers we've been looking at on the fact sheets. Additionally, if you would like to see the raw data, please visit census.gov/econ/SBO. Once the final data set is released, which we hope will be in early 2016, the Council will also be starting a comprehensive longitudinal review of trends in women business ownership from 2002 to 2012, so stay tuned. The structural differences in women's and men's social networks was something actually we focused on also. August has been a busy month for the Council, and in addition to crunching through all of the SBO data, we released 2 other research projects with critical findings that have helped us make new recommendations. The first studied structural differences of women's and men's social networks. This project, conducted by Premier Qualitative Consulting, sought to develop a deeper understanding of what the fundamental differences are between the entrepreneurial networks of men and women. Per previous NWBC research, we knew there was a disparity in the amount and source of financial capital between men and women entrepreneurs. There was plenty of emphasis on the entrepreneur's ability to identify key members of their network, but less discussion on the gender differences that exist in the entrepreneur's social networks. So we are excited to fill this gap in the literature. The completed research confirms that social networks are important to firm survival because they enable the movement of financial, human, and intellectual capital, as well as facilitate information exchange. But the usage and the efficacy of those networks vary depending on gender and are impacted by the quality and quantity of those involved. Other findings include social capital is a key to entrepreneurial confidence and ultimately your ability to achieve your desired business outcomes. For both women-owned and men-owned businesses, support from effective or influential one-time helpers has a positive effect on the owner's ability to achieve their desired outcomes. All entrepreneurs have a tendency to choose ongoing helpers who are similar to them. This isn't always as great, as it is important that your business owner has access to assets and relationships you might not have access to. And the quality of one's social network is more important than the quantity of the network. Women entrepreneurs also gain more value from ongoing relationships than men, which I don't think is a surprise. Don't miss our humble Chair Carla's feature in the New York Magazine on how to effectively find a mentor. Now, the second research project we released explores the role of undercapitalization on the survival of women-owned firms. This research is the third in the series we have commissioned on access to capital. This study found that the undercapitalization continues to be a factor in firm survival, but also found other factors that result in firm survival that potentially debunk previous findings. Specifically, previous industry experience and not startup experience is strongly connected to firm survival. I think that is so interesting. The study also found out that the team ownership leads to higher likelihood of firm survival, specifically that at least two owners are involved in day-to-day operations of the business, confirming our previous research. Additionally, high-cost capital and poor credit history negatively impacts a firm's longevity. Finally, women-owned and women-led businesses are more likely to be undercapitalized than their non-women-owned led counterparts. As a startup, women-owned and women-led firms are more likely to face liquidity constraints, which has long-term implications, as many of you know probably from personal experience. Per a similar conclusion from Babson College, the lack of sufficient capital funding for women entrepreneurs will cost the economy nearly 6 million jobs over the next 5 years. That said, over the 7-year duration of the study, it was found that the number of women-owned and women-led companies that were undercapitalized actually decreased, which we believe confirms that investing in women-owned firms has a long-term payoff. You can find both this and the research on social networks on our website at nwbc.gov. I will now turn it over to Magdala, the chair of our Group of Six committee, to share some of the progress we have made on our new 2015 research portfolio.
Thank you, Laura. A quick overview of our research portfolio activities. Just 3 months ago, the Council huddled in Austin, Texas, to make final decisions about our fiscal year 2015 research portfolio. We settled on the following projects. As you can see, the High Growth Women's Entrepreneurship Resource Platform, and I'll talk a little bit more in detail about each one of those. The exploration of the ecosystems, a deeper dive into the survey of business owners and Black women's entrepreneurs. Slide 14, please. The High Growth Entrepreneurial Research Platform, we are already making great progress on this agenda. I'm pleased to report that we have kicked off our resource platform project. If all goes well, it will be launched next year, and serve as a resource of valuable information and guidance for women entrepreneurs seeking to grow and scale their business. Our plan is to collate and curate the information needed by high-growth women entrepreneurs and to map them to the many resources available, organized by the stages of the business cycle. Through many conversations and meetings with a variety of resource partners and women business owners, we realized that there was a gap in organized information which allowed women to move quickly on tapping into the resources according to where they are in their growth stage. If the resource information is at their fingertips and organized for easy access, we are confident that it will be an asset to women and allow for the growth and scale that we all want. An easy-to-use platform that functions as a data repository for relevant tactical resources on how to ideate, launch, grow, and scale your business. It sounds like a good idea to us, so look out for the launch in 2016. It's on its way. Slide 15, please. A quick view of our 2015 research projects. As I mentioned earlier, the project on Black women entrepreneurs is also one that the Council is partnering with the SBA Office of Advocacy to complete. The goal of this program is threefold. First, to recognize and explore challenges and opportunities specific to Black women entrepreneurs and business owners. Second, to encourage dialogue amongst Black women entrepreneurs, business owners, thought leaders, policymakers, and other stakeholders on what is working and how it can work better. And thirdly, to work within breakout groups to identify policies and recommendations that will foster the growth and survival of Black women entrepreneurs and business owners. We are also looking at regional ecosystems to identify what is working, where it's working, and why it's working. We have found in our travels around the country, meeting with different women in different places, such as Detroit and Austin, that there are very vibrant local ecosystems. And we want to understand what are the conditions for their current success and what do they need in terms of additional support to further their success. And finally, building on our previous work with the survey of business owners, we have commissioned a project with Womanable to do a deeper dive into the final data set, which again we anticipate will be completed in early 2016. This analysis will focus on the nuances, trends, and patterns of growth for women in entrepreneurship since 2002. So that'll give us a good trajectory of what's happened and what's working. Slide 16, please. Sole Source and Women Small Business Certification. In addition to all of the exciting research, the Council also functions as a convener, which is by far among our most important role. And in addition, a clearinghouse to synthesize the variety of perspectives on policy that impacts women business owners and to coalesce that input into a plan and a series of recommendations to our customers, the White House, Congress, and the SBA. The Council has long called for sole source authority in the Women-Owned Small Business Federal Contracting Program, as well as improvements to the certification processes and to the program itself. You can read the Council's full comment on this matter on our website. But we do want to make sure that you are all aware of the latest updates from the SBA. They will officially issue the final rule on sole source authority on the Women-Owned Small Business Federal Contract Program on Monday, September 14th. Yes, Monday, September 14th. A PDF has been posted on the public inspection page of the Federal Register in the meantime. You can get the link from our social media channels. The next step in the process is the review and approval of the final rule by the FAR Council. And once approved, ladies and gentlemen, sole source will be official. As with any new policy, awareness will be key and critical to a successful implementation. It is therefore incumbent on all of us to educate women business owners about the sole source contracting opportunities, as well as educating the contracting officers on the use of the program and make sure that the program is implemented and that women can have access to government markets. You can count on the Council to continue to share information and resources on sole source in the days and the months ahead. In looking at our high-growth women's entrepreneurship resource platform, we applaud the progress made by the SBA with this exciting news. This is a victory for women business owners, as Sole Source Authority is an important tool for both women-owned businesses and government agencies, not only to increase access to the millions of dollars in contracts in the federal marketplace for women-owned businesses, but also to support the government agencies in reaching their WOSB 5% procurement goal. So this should be a win-win for all concerned. Actions that will help women-owned businesses thrive, grow our economy, and create new job opportunities for Americans should be placed high on the to-do list for enhancing U.S. competitiveness. Women can be instrumental in achieving this goal. I will now turn it over to Kim, the chair of our Communications Committee, to talk through some of our communications and engagement efforts. It's great to do research that is impactful, and it's as important to make sure that the public at large knows about it. Your turn, Kim.
Thank you, Magdala. We've indeed been hard at work convening and engaging women business owners, leaders, stakeholder supporters, and the press on our recent releases and other activities. I'm pleased to share some of these updates with the group today. First, in an effort to understand the multiple stakeholder perspectives on the WOSB-related provisions, the Council met with the Small Business Procurement Advisory Board in July to discuss the WOSB program and the strategies for getting to the 5% goal. As you know, the federal government has yet to reach this target, and consequently, we must really think about, how we are challenging ourselves to the areas of opportunities and where improvements can be made to be sure that doors are open and access to contracts are available and attainable for women. We had a very constructive brainstorm session, and we look forward to engaging this community further. The Council values their insights, as they will certainly inform or help to inform our policy recommendations. Next slide. In a similar vein, the Council, in partnership with the SBA Office of Women's Business Ownership, has hosted several of the women's business organizations at the SBA in late July to share these updates and discuss strategic opportunities for collaboration. There are many of us, as you all know, in this movement, and historically, from all great movements, we know that it is important to be in touch and strategically aligned as we look to move ahead in a shared agenda and mission looking forward. The SBA was well represented by the Assistant Administrator for Women's Business Ownership, Erin Andrew, Senior Advisor in the Office of General Contracting, Aditi Gasol, and, of course, our committed Administrator, Maria Contreras-Sweet. Most of the questions that we discussed were related to WOSB certification and ongoing conversation regarding sole source, and Magdala has shared the great news for Monday. And as with many, it certainly remains no doubt top of mind. Carla and Laura discussed the SBO numbers. I would like to specifically highlight some of the coverage that we've received. We were not the only ones excited about sharing the new SBO numbers. The media, too, found it newsworthy. And the data has been featured on CNN, Fortune, the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Fast Company, and others. The press was interested, of course, in the rate of growth, but also the growth as it relates to African American and Latino women-owned businesses. Just last week, Amanda, the executive director, and I were on Huffington Post Live to discuss the growth in minority women-owned businesses. It's a great sign. The media is taking interest. We couldn't be more thrilled. We firmly believe that the more that we're able to share the data and examples that we see of successful women entrepreneurs in the media, the more policymakers will take note and respond. And the more other women who are interested about taking the leap will take the leap. And, of course, the more that they hear about it, too, we also have an opportunity to impact the investment community around supporting women-owned businesses. It is definitely something that we are focused on as it relates to the Communication Committee. And, again, I'd like to also acknowledge our other committee members, so thank everyone for their hard work here. Our friends in the media who are ranging in the form of journalists, bloggers, you name it, across the platforms of media, even our good friends on the broadcast side as segment producers. We are very much appreciative of your willingness and your advocacy to shine a spotlight on women's business ownership. On that note, too, in working with the media, we have designed a special resource tool that we think will help to support the opportunities to further build awareness and engagement to advance the agenda for women business owners. We've been working on a project with regards to women's business ownership and the press, building on this commitment to push the public narrative on business and entrepreneurship and women. We just completed a media resource and designed for journalists and other media makers and are committed to help them as they are committed to us in effectively covering more women business owners. This will be out next month, and it includes tips on how to talk with women entrepreneurs, resources for how to interview women business owners, and how to find them. We know that they're out there, and so we want to help them in areas of opportunity to locate women business owners of all scales. Spoiler alert for Women's Business Ownership Month. We are hoping that this tool will, of course, result in some stronger outcomes. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to Madam Chair to turn it over to our audience. And again, thank you all for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much, Kim and Magdala and Laura. And we now have a few minutes for questions before we turn it over to our outstanding panel. Moderator?
We do not have any questions in the queue. So again, a reminder for those that do have questions, please type them in to the window on the side of your screen, and we can go ahead and start the panel.
Okay, great. Thank you. Again, thank you all for joining us for the formal portion of the quarterly meeting of the National Women's Business Council. This will conclude our council updates, and now I will turn it back over to Executive Director Amanda Brown to introduce and moderate our dynamic panel. Amanda, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Carla. And thank you, Jules, Julia, Trish, and Jean for joining us today for this panel. We will go ahead and get started. My name is Amanda Brown, and I am the Executive Director of the National Women's Business Council. I could not be more thrilled to be on the line today with all of you this afternoon. I know will be an engaging and thought-provoking and also very constructive dialogue. Women's entrepreneurship, and specifically high-growth women's entrepreneurship, has seen remarkable progress in the last decade. Women are starting, growing, and scaling businesses. Women are innovating and filling market gaps. They are creating jobs, and their impact to the economy and their communities is huge. Theory suggests that the market would respond and support these women and their business pursuits, but reality confirms that's not actually the case right now. The gender gap is real, it is alive and well, and there is a long way to go towards achieving real parity, particularly in the venture capital industry. So this will be a conversation today about closing that gap, and we will talk about strategies for doing so quickly and urgently, and we'll talk about some tactics that women entrepreneurs can use to get more money for the businesses that they are hoping to grow. Per our research, women in high-growth industries are starting with 6 times less capital right now than men. And when we look at venture capital and what's happening for women in pursuit, a recent study out of Stanford tells us that women-led enterprises are actually only receiving 4.2% of venture capital. Perhaps that's less shocking when you consider also that only 4% of women are working in the upper echelons of venture capital firms right now. But perhaps not shocking when you consider the unprecedented growth that's in women entrepreneurship in the last decade. Right now, women are starting 1,200 new businesses a day and own a third of the privately held businesses in the country, or really the higher likelihood that women in high-growth industries will experience rapid growth, which is another finding from council research. Women obviously stand to benefit greatly from a more balanced VC landscape, Women are the majority owners now of nearly 10 million businesses in the country. And per the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, 36% of women with established businesses want to grow their ventures, which shows the appetite for funding that is outpacing the current supply. In a recent study that just came out at the end of July, actually, First Round Capital reported that companies with at least one female founder perform 63% better than companies with an all-male team. Candida Brush of Babson College, a good friend of the council, recently also said there is an enormous untapped investment opportunity for venture capitalists smart enough to look at the numbers and fund women entrepreneurs. We do need to close the gap, and we need to do so quickly, and I want to maximize the time and the expertise that we have today, so I'm going to jump right into the introductions of our panelists. We are lucky to have such an impressive group of women joining us. They will no doubt bring expertise and perspective and share a commitment to fixing the gap, which you will hear once we get going. So, first, we will start with Jean Sullivan. Jean currently serves as the Chief Inspiration Officer at Sullivan Adventures and is the co-founder and special advisor at StarVest Partners, a New York-based venture capital firm. She serves on the board of the New York Venture Capital Association, is a member of the Women's Leadership Board at the Harvard Kennedy School, and is an Athena Entrepreneur Fellow for Barnard College. She is an advisor to many women-focused organizations, among them being ASTIA. ASTIA is an organization that funds high-growth women entrepreneurs and is represented on our council by Dr. Teresa Nelson. Forbes has cited Jean as one of the women VCs changing the world, grooming the next generation of female entrepreneurs. If you don't already know Jean, you'll soon appreciate the many accolades that she has received. Next, we have Julia Pimsler. Julia is the CEO and founder of Little Pim, which is a system for introducing young children to a second language, featuring the proprietary entertainment immersion method. She's an experienced fundraiser too. Julia has raised over $6 million in angel and VC funding and $20 million in philanthropic dollars, and is currently serving as the accelerator chair of the Entrepreneurs Organization. To help women get further faster, Julia has created Double Digit Academy, which is a boot camp that she wishes she could have attended. I'll let her tell you more about that and also about the big day that she's having today. But if that was not enough of a contribution, she is the author of a new book, which is coming to stores near you next month, called $1 Million Women, the essential guide for female entrepreneurs who want to go big. Our third panelist is Trish Costello. Trish is the founder and CEO of Portfolia, which is an investing platform connecting influential new investors with growing entrepreneurial companies. It is focused on crowdfunding for companies that sell directly to consumers. Trish is also the CEO Emeritus and co-founder of the prestigious Kauffman Fellows Program at the Center for Venture Education, whose fellows, I might add, operate at over 300 venture firms in 50 countries and collectively deploy $188 billion in venture capital. She previously served as the first president of CVE Capital and was on the startup team of the Kauffman Foundation, where she actually created the foundation's women initiative to develop high-potential women entrepreneurs and to obtain greater equity investments in women's businesses. She serves on the board of Springboard Enterprises, another friend of the Council, National Venture Capital Association, the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, among many others. And then last but certainly not least, we are excited to have Jules Thierry on the line. Jules is the co-founder and CEO of The Grommet, which is an e-commerce site that helps promising entrepreneurs launch new products. They have launched more than 2,000 consumer products since 2008. The Grommet is actually Jules' third startup, and word is that Jules is the first designer to have ever graduated from Harvard Business School, where she now also serves as an entrepreneur in residence. She was named one of Fortune's most powerful women entrepreneurs in 2013 and one of Goldman Sachs' most interesting entrepreneurs in 2014. She has been a vocal proponent of a new and innovative tax policy that might help close the gender gap. Spoiler alert on the Title IX for funding concept, but I'll stop there and let Jules tell you more about it once we get a panel. So we have an impressive lineup for this very important conversation. Jean, Julia, Trish, and Jules, thank you for joining the call today. You're helping me work on the pronunciation of the letter J. Let's talk about spreading the wealth, changing the game, closing the gap, and getting more money to more investment-ready women-owned businesses. To get us started, let's do some level setting and define exactly what the gender gap is. And with that, Jean, I'm actually going to turn it over to you for the landscape, a state of the union, if you will. How would you assess today's gender gap?
Sure. Thank you, Amanda, for that really great introduction. And it's a lot of fun to be on this panel. And I so appreciate this large and terrific audience. So thank you all for being here. I am so delighted to be with my colleagues here on this panel because I also know each of you. So how fun that we're talking about this today and really amplifying our voices about what this gender gap's all about. Let me quickly start there. Now, I hope you, and you being this large, wonderful audience, aren't one of those people still saying, well, why aren't there more women entrepreneurs or VCs? Why aren't there more angel investors or women in the C-suite or on boards? And I am asking you, stop if you are asking why. First of all, you heard today from Carla and the executive team many of the facts and figures of where we are, and a lot of that is good news. Guess what? Things are happening. Much is working. But if you've heard me speak, you've heard me say this, but you need to hear it again because it's so important. The research shows this gender bias that has created this dearth that we're fixing, it starts actually in grade school, in 3rd and 4th grade. And women, if they get a bad grade in the sciences or math, these STEM sectors, we say to ourselves, well, we're not good enough for that, and drop back. Do you know what guys say? Guys say the teacher's stupid and I need to learn this. And this is when it starts. So girls and then women don't think they have the stuff to learn this. And it is one of my signature lines, you can learn this stuff and it's important. And that is what's happening. Through the role models, the educating, the coming together, the connecting, these wonderful organizations that are now starting and creating such wonderful angel groups and funds focused on women-owned businesses, teaching people, teaching women how to be angels. These are making big differences. So that is thrilling. Now here's a few more numbers, but not too many. Do you know that only you heard it said only 4% of senior partners are venture capitalists. See, that ties back to we just really, many of us didn't have the operational experience, the financial experience and insights, or learn those along the way to play. You got to have that to play. I don't think women should have a right to any of these roles unless they know what to do and how to do it. That's important, and that's where some of the breakthroughs coming. I'm also fascinated with this, that in the Fortune 500, only 19% are board members. Of the Fortune 500, women hold only 23 of the CEO jobs in Fortune 500, and only about 16% of the C-suite roles below CEO. But here's what really got me passionate about it and what I want to share with you. The following of what I'm about to tell you is what really got me both mad enough to do something about this for years to follow. I found it most daunting that we as women have $7 trillion of the buying power in the U.S. and globally $20 trillion, going up to $30 trillion over the next several years. So we're the ones making the decisions around clothing, housing, healthcare, what we buy, the e-commerce that's happening, but we're not at the table making those decisions. When I learned that, I said, that's it, I'm doing something about it. And the doing something is showing how these connections, educating, helping each other can make it happen. You heard it said already, diversity does make a difference. It improves innovation. We have a different lens through which we look. That's why these women-founded companies are getting somewhere, are getting noticed. And here's another piece of good news. We need the men. The men do have both the power and the money, make no mistake, but they are starting to understand that there is this gender bias. They're more willing to take action, but let me tell you why. The men we are marrying and the sons we are having daughters. They want their daughters to succeed. Even grandfathers who only sent their sons to college want their granddaughters to get the best education possible and to succeed and excel. So that's where some of the dynamics are. I love sharing those thoughts. And again, the good news, we're getting somewhere because of these wonderful initiatives. All right, back to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Jean. That was really helpful. I actually want to let Trish weigh in on this a little bit, and specifically talk about women as angel investors. A woman wrote an article in TechCrunch, I guess it was a week and a half ago now, which the byline was, "The real unicorns are female angel investors." And she writes, "To get more women in tech today, we need women investors. Women investors are important because they signal to women that you belong here." Trish, I'm hoping that you can chime in and speak to us a little bit about how the role of women as angel investors has changed in the last decade.
Yes, thanks, Amanda. I think this is one of the really positive stories and opportunities when we're looking at getting more money into women-led companies. A major piece of this, and following on with what Jean was saying, is who has the cash, who has the money, and has the power to actually greenlight the companies and the products and the teams we want to see in the marketplace. And we're at the cusp now of some major shifts with the type of wealth that women actually own and control. So some of the latest numbers tell us that there are now about 5 million women who are accredited to be angel investors. And as most of you know, that's a financial metric that you hit. So you need to make $200,000 a year in income or have $1 million of assets minus your primary residence. So there are now about 5 million women, almost equal to the number of men who are accredited. And collectively, these 5 million women own about $10 trillion in private investable assets. So $10 trillion. So when we look at these numbers, what it tells us is that if women just begin to put even a very small amount of their investable wealth behind the companies that they want to see in the market, that we could actually greatly shift what's happening in the entrepreneurial world. So, and not only do we own that kind of wealth, and it's continuing to increase, partly because those of us who are boomers live longer than our male counterparts, and also on the younger side because 60% of all degrees are going to women. Undergrad degrees, it's a majority in graduate, and also just a bit of a majority in PhDs. So we are holding so much more wealth actually on all sides of the demographic. So not only do we own that wealth, but we're starting to see major behavioral changes as well. 4 years ago, it was about 10% of angel investors were women. Today, in about 3.5 years, that number has grown to 26%. Of all angel groups now are made up. 20% of all angels in groups are made up of women. So we've almost tripled in just those few years, and we don't see any changes, in that trend upwards. So women have the money. They are joining groups, and the stats out there are really historic. All of the major banks are seeing the kind of shift in the last few years. In fact, just in July, J.P. Morgan did a study on women and wealth, and 90% of their high net worth clients said that they were interested in income or in returns for their families and their businesses, but 90% wanted to back women's startups and also corporate social responsibility. So we're really getting ready to enter a gold time for women angels, and many education programs are out there that are stepping up to prep women. So I really think it's a great, we're getting ready to move into a great day, Amanda, on the angel side.
Thank you. That is exciting and promising news. I want to open it up to others on other panelists right now just to see if
This is Julia. Can I jump in, Amanda?
Please.
I'd love to, first of all, those are wonderful stats, and I've been reading them too about the increase in women angel investors. And I'd love to take us out of the stats and down into the trenches of women entrepreneurs, because that's where I come from. When I built my business, Little Pim, I had raised some friends and family, some angel, but when it came time to go raise venture capital, it was such a bigger hill to climb, and there was so little information and so few women who had raised venture that it took months and months and months to understand the landscape. And I ultimately did raise $2 million in venture capital and was able to double the size of my business thanks to that. But that's when I turned around and started teaching women how to raise angel and venture capital, and I've been on this incredible journey for 3 years teaching women to go fundraise. And I've really found that there's 3 main ingredients that they need and just don't have. So I just want to speak about those a moment. And those are the mindset, the skill set, and the network. And any woman who has those 3 things can be successful fundraising, but there's a lot of really basic work that still has to be done to help women entrepreneurs get their arms around those. And the hardest one is really the mindset. I've trained over 50 women, and they've raised a collective $10 million. But many of them did not go fundraise because they just didn't have that sort of think big mindset. And the truth is you can't raise money unless you can show an investor how their funds are going to, bring in 2x, 5x, 10x, depending on who you're approaching. And if you don't have that mindset yourself, you can't get out there and make that pitch. So that's the first thing, is the mindset. And that's where I think a lot more work needs to be done, and where one of the focused on in my book, $1 Million Women, and in the profiles of the women entrepreneurs I interviewed. How did you get that mindset? How did you think big? The second piece is the skill set. Women do not know how to fundraise. No one is teaching this. And let's face it, it's hard for anyone to fundraise. Every entrepreneur struggles with this. No one gets up and says, I'm dying to start my business so I can go fundraise. That's the part I'm really excited about. But men, I find, in their networks happen to have a friend or a cousin or a college roommate who is working in banking or in private equity, and they call that buddy up, and the buddy introduces them to people and teaches them how to do this. Whereas for women, they may have those folks in their network, and it's harder to get that skill set so that they can be ready to go pitch. And that's one of the things I was teaching in my Double Digit Academy, and will now be teaching through $1 Million Women and joining the other wonderful organizations that are getting women ready to go pitch, such as Astia and Springboard and so many other great ones. And then that third piece is network, that even if you have the go big mindset and you've been taught how to fundraise, if you can't get into the room with the right people, you're still not going to raise that money. And that's where we all need to help women get access and opportunities to pitch to angels and VCs. And I think this is an incredible time of opportunity for angels and entrepreneurs to come together and really bridge this gap, this huge gender gap in funding that I want fixed in my lifetime. I don't know about y'all, but I don't want to be complaining about this at 70 years old. This is ridiculous. So my challenge to everyone is that, by 2020, we need to get 1 million more women funded and give them opportunities to grow their businesses big, because this, it's an anachronism, right? We all read Lean In, and we were saying, okay, 15% in the boardroom, this is unacceptable, but 15% would be a huge win on any of these stats that we just talked about. So few women have $1 million businesses, so few women get funded. So I'm excited to work with the people on this panel and with the National Women's Business Council to start fixing this. I'll stop there, but I could go on for hours, you know.
Yeah, thank you, Julia. A bit of a housekeeping reminder for those that are tuning into the webinar, please do chime in with questions. We are answering them in real time, and we'll certainly be addressing them at the end of the panel conversation as well. I wanted to add some numbers to the chart on the screen that you see. Thank you, Julia, for sharing that with everyone. Early stage venture capital investing represents the greatest proportion of the total venture capital investments. This is from the Babson study, so 49%, while later stage venture capital comprised 31% and seed capital made up 20%. And then companies with a woman executive on the team were more likely to receive later stage funding, which was 21% of the investments. And then on the other hand, companies with women entrepreneurs received only 13% of the total investments in the early stage and only 9% in the seed stage. Some of the research that we've done more recently has found also that only one woman is raising equity financing for every 9 men that do. 41% of private companies are women-owned, and obviously the number of the VC funding number is somewhere between this 2.5 and 5%, which is not proportional. Women are only averaging 2% of equity funding per the Council's latest research on access to capital. So we know that undercapitalization is a contributing factor to business failure, which a quick Council plug right there. You can check out this latest research on our website. Trish, I'm going to turn it back to you to talk about what the other opportunities are for raising some early funding. I'd love to hear your thoughts on crowdfunding. It's I would say a practice or a new opportunity that those on the Council have called a game changer or a democratizer of fundraising for women.
Yes. So, really there are two major issues right now. What we're practicing right now is basically aggregating more women, but women that are accredited. That's really what crowdfunding, for the most part, looks like today. Now, we believe in the future, in the next few months, that we're going to see some major changes where more women will be able to invest, more men and women will be able to invest without that $200,000 limitation on income to invest, and that there may be some changes as well with the definition of sophisticated. So what we believe we're going to see and anticipate seeing is that there's really going to be a broadening of the investor pool. And because women are such great networkers, and because we're market makers, as a number of people have mentioned, we're the buyers, we're the chief purchasing officers of the U.S., our ability to be really high-value investors in those spaces, is very high. But even though we don't have a broader kind of crowd investing right now, what we're seeing are a number of new models that have been brought about by some of the legislation that's already there. One thing that we've done recently is create with Kauffman Foundation what we call a Learn by Investing Fund. Our fund is called Rising Tide Fund, and we've basically brought in 99 women at a minimum of $10,000 each into an actual venture fund led by 9 senior women angels. And that fund will be invested in 1 year, and through that year, those 99 limited partner investors, will actually learn how to invest while their money, their $10,000, is invested in 6 to 9 companies. And so it's one of those ways that we can now, one of those kind of innovations that we can put into the market that will really train and scale women as investors, both as angels, and then potentially to work up, if they want, in more institutional roles as well. And like you were saying earlier, Julia, our goal is to train 1 million women as investors in the next 5 years, and they're going to invest in your 1 million women entrepreneurs.
I see a partnership in our future. I've got the pipeline.
That's how we're going to do it, isn't it?
It's fantastic. absolutely. I love what you're doing. Great hearing about that.
So this brings us to a really important question, and one that I know all of our panelists have something to share here, and it's a question that is overwhelming our notes section right now on the webinar, so want to make sure we get to it. What practical and actionable advice do you have for a woman entrepreneur in pursuit of capital? Julia, you actually wrote an article about this that was featured in Forbes titled Life in the 4%, or 10 Things I Wish I Knew When I Started Raising Venture Capital. What can you tell us? What can you tell everyone on the line today?
Sure. Well, I think, there's so many things you need to learn when you go raise venture capital, but probably the most important ones are to gather your team around you. It's something that really can't be done alone, in the sense that you have to have supportive people who are coaches, advisors, mentors to help you really plan for success, and you need a team in your office so that when you're out fundraising, you have people who are keeping your company going. It really is a numbers game, raising VC. I know that when I started teaching Double Digit Academy, a woman showed up and said, I went and pitched to these 4 VCs and they all said no. So I gave up. And I was like, 4? You're just getting started. When you pitch to 100, come back and we'll talk. Because it is a numbers game, and that means you're going to be out a lot pitching. So you have to make sure you have, your company covered and plan for that. In terms of the mentors and advisors, you want to go talk to other CEOs who've raised money. That was my greatest source. I created Double Digit Academy because there was nothing to help me learn how to raise venture, and I just talked to other CEOs who were all men. I think I found one woman who had raised a little bit. And they walked me through how it works, and that is still probably your most invaluable resource when you're getting out there to raise capital, is find someone who's gone through it. After that, I highly suggest, and I put the link in the video, in the article that Amanda's referring to, is a great video by David Rose on YouTube, and it's 10 Things You Need to Know Before You Pitch to a VC, and it's sort of like a classic video, and I learned almost everything I needed to know about pitching from that video, so that's a top rec. And then there's just one last thought, but again, do read the article if you want all 10 tips, is to get a public speaking coach. I can't emphasize this enough. Sometimes as women, we think that we are good presenters because we're good talkers, right? We like to talk. We're good at communicating. But pitching is a very specific skill. And there's a beginning, middle, and end to every pitch. There's a crescendo. There's a way you hook your audience in. And this is a skill that you need to learn to be successful. So I strongly recommend that women get coaching. And it sounds like some of the people on this call are creating programs that are going to make that more widely available. But if you can't find a program in your area, just go find a coach who's helped people prep for pitching, and that will definitely pay off. I used one, and I think that's a large part of why I was able to raise venture capital.
Thank you. Jules, I'm going to turn it to you now. You also have experience raising capital. What advice or words of wisdom do you have for women? I also want to open it up to what advice do you have for people on the other side of the table, or the investors and the people that are writing these checks?
Well, I'm always optimizing for the potential success in giving any kind of advice in this arena, and it's not all that different from men to women in terms of some of the basics. But when I'm optimizing for women, I do think very, very heavily towards angel investors, and the reason for that is that the probability of success is so much higher. So if you start with the most democratic fundraising platform, that would be crowdfunding. And women have 47%, they get 47% of the capital in crowdfunding. I mean traditional, or the more consumer-oriented crowdfunding platforms like Indiegogo. And women get 47% of the capital, and they have a 65% higher chance of success than men in completing the project. And the reason for that, I think, is quite simple. It's that women are in that environment given a chance to pitch to people who look like America, who look like them. So it's fair, basically, that they can reach people, understand how they think, talk, and what problems they might be solving. The next best thing, that's a great source of capital for certain kinds of companies and projects. Obviously, when Trish gets to the equity, it's even better, equity crowdfunding. But it's not right for all companies. At the Grommet, where we launched product, 25% of our companies have been crowdfunding. So it's a substantial portion, but we work in consumer products. So then I move over to angel funding. And angels, it's hard to find really clear stats about women's success with angel investors, but generally the stats I see line up around 20% of angel funding going to women. And my own experience is that was a very, very productive place to go. I raised $4.4 million from angels. That's a lot of angel funding, by the way. I wouldn't necessarily expect that most people want to raise that much from angels. I had 35 angels, 40% of them were women, 50% of the capital came from women. And my hit rate when I pitched to angel investors was about 33% yes. 1 in 3 said yes. And I basically found it to be, that's a great hit rate, by the way. What Julia said about VCs, if you're lucky if you get, 1 out of 100 to say yes, that's a fairly, typical proportion you might experience with VCs. Whereas angels, the reason why they're so much more productive is they don't have that weird partnership dynamic where this, it's going to be a man has to go back and convince a group of 10 other men to invest in this woman entrepreneur. I think that dynamic is super difficult, whereas the angel just goes home and looks in the mirror and says, do I like this entrepreneur? Do I like this venture? And they can make a much faster decision and worry less about the optics of backing a woman. They don't have to think about that. They can think about their own instincts on the investment. So if you presume you're going to go after angels, I think one thing I didn't know when I did this and made my life a lot harder than it had to be is I didn't understand how angels do like to move in packs. What I mean is people like to kind of invest alongside other people. They like their money to be surrounded by other people's capital. It de-risks the investment, but it's also efficient because people who do this, and I'm talking about it more informally, there are formal angel groups, so I'm talking informally, kind of basically bully each other into investing in, each other's deals. One person will do the diligence on a deal and then ask 3 other friends to help. And then when it's time for that one of those friends who's gotten close to a deal, they'll call in the chips from the other angels. And I didn't understand that idea of a lead angel kind of paving the way for me for a very long time. So I individually pitched, basically all those 35 angels that invested in my company. It took a lot longer and it was a lot harder than if I could have and understood the benefit of finding somebody who would sort of row in alongside me, probably for, some additional equity or maybe a board seat or something that made them a little closer to the company. Some people like that in order to play that role. But that would have been really, really smart, and I think I did it much more the hard way. One other thing I think about, this is not necessarily gender specific, but your goal in pitching any investor, angel or venture capitalist in the first meeting is not to win yes or no in that first meeting. It's generally you're trying to just get the second meeting. So I think of it as a lot of sizzle, basically. You want to paint a picture of what is at the top of the mountain, where are you headed, and get them excited to be at the top of the mountain. So you're going to be talking initially in very, very kind of large, broad stroke terms around the market opportunity, the size of it, your particular secret sauce or reason for going at it. And what I want at the end of a meeting, my first meeting with somebody, is I want to be the person they remember that day. And the way I make sure that's the case is that I make sure in the course of that first meeting that I tell them one unforgettable story and 2 or 3 really compelling stats about my business or my opportunity. Because I presume that they are taking 10 of these meetings, if not more, in a single day. And at the end of the day, when they go and talk to their partner or their spouse at home, I want to be the one that they just can't forget.
Trish, that is so well said. This is Julia again, and you also reminded me that it's so important for women who go into raising angel or venture to have a plan for 2 important things. One, keeping track of all the people they meet. It just very quickly becomes confusing. You're meeting literally dozens and dozens of people and companies, and so you have to have a great system for organizing all that and tracking it. And I offer one for free on my website at juliapimsler.com, just an outreach chart that you can take, keep notes on everyone. And the second thing is, how are you going to keep people engaged with your company? Because, Trish, I'm sure you'll agree, it often takes weeks or even months for folks to make a decision. Even the angels who, some of them do go home and look in the mirror to make the decision, but some need to talk to family members or they have a family trust. And so this all can take a very long time, and you want to have a system in place for keeping people up to date on your accomplishments. So maybe it's that once a month you're sending out an update to everybody who's on that great outreach chart that you're keeping, saying, hey, here are milestones this month. We beat our revenues by last month. We just launched our new products. We're getting great reviews from our customers. Look forward to talking to you soon. And just staying on people's radars makes a big difference. When we talked about all those no's that you get, in the fundraising world, we like to say that a no means I don't know enough yet, right? K-N-O-W. People say no for a long time, and then those no's become yeses. So to get them to the yes is the tricky part.
Yeah, so let's actually dive into that, because we have two people on the line, Trish and Jean, that are the people we need to say that yes. Hopefully the advice that you both just shared answered Corey's question that we had on the line. We have another question from Andrea Matthews that talks about, or is asking how to find angels, which is helpful for the question that I want to pose now, which is, Trish and Jean, of the business ventures that you have funded or have seen funded, and those that have been successful, what are the qualities that set those apart?
Yes, Dean, I'll kick off. It is thrilling for me to leverage more than 25 years as a venture capital investor. I feel I have seen it all, and I really love working with early stage, especially women entrepreneurs. So I've seen thousands and thousands of pitches, and I am on the speaking tour. And one of my subjects is 5 stupid or silly things that entrepreneurs keep doing over and over again. And I share that hopefully to get a laugh, because there's really 500 things, but boiling it down to the top 5. The first is how to just get that meeting. And I'll address that question from the audience about angels. And Trish, I want you to weigh in too. Your best angel are people who already know you and trust you. They already know you're fabulous. Now, what are you doing? Guess what? They might be interested, especially if they have domain experience in what you're building. So look around you. Your angels are everywhere. Maybe there's somebody that you worked with before or worked for. Maybe it's your neighbor. And so just think about the people that you have met along the way. That is the quickest and best way to get their wallet out as an angel. They already know you, so you've managed through that. Now, can you package what you're doing to show a compelling reason why they should invest? So getting that warm introduction as part of getting that meeting is also important. You cannot go in cold. It does not work. Do you know I get emails, I'm sure everyone on this call on the panel get this. Dear sir or madam, are you kidding me? You can't even look up my name on the website? So there's some really important things you have to do about that, get the meeting. Let me pause there, Trish. Weigh in on that angel view from your standpoint.
Yes, Jean, I think you're absolutely right. The closer, the earliest money has to come from people that have a connection with you, because usually at that point you have an idea or a concept, a hypothesis, and oftentimes you don't have a lot else besides that. So it has to be people that believe in you and have seen what you've been able to create. And then that next step is finding people in your domain space, and those are fairly easy to find as well. It's we are kind of I'll go back to another theme that we are kind of in the golden age with angels, in that now many of them don't mind being identified. They show themselves, say they're investors or angels in their LinkedIn. There are angel groups that meet on a regular basis. They have meetups. You can go to the Angel Capital Association website, and they have a listing of all their angel groups and the specialty spaces. There's actually many women angel groups that are specializing in backing women or publicize that they're very open to see women. But like Jean says, you don't want to, go in blind. There's enough ways to research different people, different individuals in angel groups to find out their specialty field. And that's an important piece. Angel groups now are not all generalists like they were at one time. There are many of the angel groups that specialize in specific geographies or areas or fields or stages. So, it's important to look for that. And then finally, one of the best ways to find angels is to find, to sit down and talk with those entrepreneurs, often that are related to your space but are not direct competitors, and find out where they found their early money. Get recommendations on specific angels that are known to be high value to you as an entrepreneur, and get those introductions to those angels, and know that with angels, they're investing their own money, and oftentimes they want to sit down with you over a course of months and get to know you, and then be a part of what you're doing. And then finally, groups like Portfolio, where we have a network of 8,000 angels on the Portfolio.com site, all that are interested in women, 80% of them, but on AngelList as well, where there are thousands of angels, and you can search them and then go to LinkedIn, find your connections, and get those introductions from the angels.
Well, what I hear a lot from women entrepreneurs, this is Julia again, is that they're worried about actually taking investment from angel investors. That I hear a lot of women saying, well, what if I don't make the returns that the angels are looking for? Or what if, something goes wrong? And I think this is a gendered thing where, we're worried about our investors. And I often tell women, you don't have to take care of these investors. They often, the women I work with, don't know the term accredited investor and don't realize that people can't invest the money that they're going to retire on, right? If someone loses their money investing in your company, they're not going to street because of you. So this is an important thing to get out there to women, that these are people who have disposable income who are going to invest in someone else's company if they don't invest in yours. And at least with you, you were going to, work to the bone, the last dying breath to make your company successful. You don't know that about the other entrepreneurs. So I always tell women, you're giving these people an opportunity, and if you believe in your company, then absolutely go find angel investors who want to join you on that journey. But we can sometimes be too maternal here, so I just want to call that out.
No, that's
I had a situation like that once. This is Jules again, where I, as I said, raised $4.4 million in angel investment before I went on to raise $12 million more from a strategic investor. But when I was at the very end of that angel funding course, I raised $100,000 from the last investor, who happened to be a business school friend, and I thought it was just a tiny bridge to the deal that I was working on, the bigger deal. And then that bigger deal fell through, and I hadn't yet cashed her check. And I called her and said, Bridget, I can't cash your check. I don't know that this is really the bridge I thought it was. And I feel bad about cashing it. And remember, I've already raised $4.3 million, but I had knowledge that things were dicey. And she said back to me, Jules, you're being such a girl. I can afford this, and I want to see you pursue this opportunity. I'm entirely prepared to lose this money. And by the way, she got the biggest return of anyone in our deal when we brought in the strategic investor, just because of the timing of her investment. So she did really, really well when she was bought out by the strategic investor. But I was prepared to send her check back. What a mistake that would have been.
Yeah, that is it's so true. And, even, as I sit here, this is Trish talking about and for years I have coached entrepreneurs and venture capitalists on both sides of the aisle on this. But when it is you, because now I have been out fundraising for my own company at the same time that we're funding others and have our 2 funds out there, and it is still something, even with all the years I have on agent experience, there's still a game there.
I really really like where this conversation is going. And so I want to remind everyone, the Council sits in this unique position where we are the government's voice for women entrepreneurs. We are producing this research. We're having a lot of conversations like this, and we're learning from all of this so that we can ultimately create policy recommendations, actionable policy recommendations to improve the climate for women. Access to capital obviously has been the greatest barrier to, or is the greatest barrier to entrepreneurship, and is consequently a great priority of the Council. And we have covered on this call many of the obstacles that stand in the way. So while we have this esteemed group of panelists, I want to make sure that we do have some time to scheme and to dream and actually talk about these actionable next steps that we should be taking, or should at least be thinking about and talking about taking, to really close the gender gap. So Jules, I'm going to start with you here.
Amanda, let me just say this. It's Jean again. I to the audience by saying I've got 5 things. I stopped at 1 and noticed we had that good conversation. Let me race through the other 4 just to get it out there.
You got it.
These are the, to remind the audience, 5 things that I see the successful entrepreneurs doing. And one was that ability to get the meeting, and you just heard a whole lot of great ideas. Second, make sure once you get the meeting, you better get that story out your mouth. And I love Julia's idea of getting a speaking coach, somebody who can help you package. It's critical. You're not born knowing this stuff, so get some good insight from people who know, and there's plenty of us out there who know how to package for you. Third, in the meeting, I want you to tell me about the business of the business. Do not shovel a demo in my face in the first minute. That tells me it's a marker that you're much more in love with your products and feature set than building and scaling. I want to hear how you're going to go to market. What about you and your dynamic team? Tell me about the business model and the pricing model. And so that, again, packaging is critical. Next, this is important. Know your financials cold. If I ask you a financial question, maybe it was about what was the pre-money valuation in the last round, or how much capital is it going to take to drive this business to break even? And if I see a blank stare, guess what? You got the first meeting, you're not going to get the second meeting. It is critical that you know your financials. And again, you can get people at your side to show you the ropes, and they can even go with you to the meeting, make you look good. So do that and learn the ropes on that. And lastly, follow up appropriately and learn how to negotiate the investment properly. Julia pointed out those pieces about follow-up, sending updates. That's really important. And keep them posted, and then try for that next meeting. So there's my hot list. Back to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Jean. That was quite helpful. We've gotten a lot of questions about advice, so thank you for adding in there. So Jules actually has this really cool idea that she has pitched to the president, and she has been quoted as saying, sometimes this conversation can sound like we care only about women realizing their potential as individuals. This conversation is actually about having a strong economy and having access to healthy companies. So Jules, can you tell us about the big idea that you have, this Title IX idea?
Yeah, and to expand, before I do, to expand on sort of the why, I have 3 sons, and I'm very interested in getting capital to women because they will enter into a more competitive and healthy work environment. If companies are founded by diverse teams, everything starts at the very beginning. So I actually see women being funded and people of color being funded is improving everybody's ability to work in the kind of companies we'd like to work for. So it's very, very far from the realization of any individual woman entrepreneur's dreams when I care about this issue. That's important, but it's much bigger than that. So I'm super impatient about the reality of the stat I use is the most recent one out of Babson College, the 2.7% of venture capital going to women and the 4% of women being venture capitalists. So I've proposed this idea that's very parallel to what happened in the 70s when we instituted Title IX for funding women's athletics. And the idea back there, it was very controversial. People thought that women didn't want and girls didn't want to play sports, that they wouldn't show up, they wouldn't sign up, that it was a waste of money. But it happened, and lo and behold, it was incredibly successful and tied very directly, funding women's sports was tied very directly to women's participation in graduate school and other sort of playing fields of life. So we tied institutions' federal funding to equity in the area of sports. Now, I'm an athlete, and as much as I think athletics are super important and a way to train, I do think business, trumps athletics in terms of the opportunity to shape the world and realize your potential. So I'd like to transport this idea of Title IX from athletics to entrepreneurship. And there's a parallel in the tax opportunities here, because what many people don't realize is that accredited investors, venture capitalists, private equity investors get a tax rate that ordinary people don't get when they get returns on their investments. They don't pay full truck tax rates. They pay capital gains rates on these investments, and even when it's essentially not their own money, it's the fund's money, they get paid, they don't pay ordinary income tax rates, which in essence I actually don't have a problem with, because I want to do anything we can to get investors to participate in funding entrepreneurship. The part I have trouble with, and why I think there's a Title IX parallel here, is that there are federal tax dollars subsidizing this, and usually when there's a federal policy in place, there are prescribed economic outcomes and goals that we expect to come from those subsidies. And nobody's really minding the store on this one, because we've never really had the outcomes that we as Americans would want to see happen. That if we're funding this, then when it's our turn or our daughter's turn or our brother's turn to raise capital, that we might have access to that, and we don't, clearly. So I would like to tie participation in that lower tax rate to outcomes, i.e., please report when you invest, who you invest in, and who you are employing. Really simple. I would like to see that eventually there'd be a ratcheted expectation that the population would be represented in those investments if you want to take advantage of the tax break. But even just starting with reporting would be a very good start. And this information is hidden. It's impossible. I mean, you can get it, but it's not shared right now. So Title IX for getting venture capital to women is very much on my mind.
If I could jump in, I think that what Jules has put together is very innovative. And, we already know that in the presidential election they're going to be talking about, carried interest and how it's being processed. So I think it's a really interesting time, for these kinds of discussions to happen. And the other thing is it's still not in the early stage, but still many venture funds and many of the largest venture funds, a lot of their money still comes from pension funds. And a lot of those pension funds are coming from teachers and nurses and others where it's a huge numbers of women, and just a tiny fraction of any of that money goes back to, women's businesses or VCs led by women. And so I think there's a number of ways as well through policy that can be impacted, even if it is just, as you're saying, Jules, that those reports, even just requiring reports to go back, with a number of those different limited partners or universities who are huge suppliers of venture capital, so that we know if our alumni associations, are 99% of their money, is going only to male-led organizations.
And just to open it up to the group, are there any other initiatives or strategies or recommendations that you think we should have on the table? No idea is too big or too small right now, and would love to hear people weigh in on that.
Well, I think, in practice, things like, the SBICs, where there's, amounts that are set up that are supposed to go to women-led venture funds, I think in practice I hear all the time from experienced women VCs who've started new funds that they really don't feel like they're really given a fair deal, in looking at those. And so that's something that's, of course, very close, with an organization. And I think sometimes the people at the top have a big vision and want it to go there, but in practice, oftentimes we're just not seeing that money and that focus really open to women and minorities.
Definitely. Jean, you actually kicked us off with an interesting thought, which is top of mind for me a lot in terms of this conversation starts so much earlier with also young girls in school, and curious if you have any thoughts there.
Well, I think it's critical. The research proves that role models, again, this education, supporting each other makes all the difference. Imagine if you're in 8th grade and you met a dynamic woman CEO of a Fortune 500 company or a thriving entrepreneurial company. It could change everything. So putting those role models forward early, and then I really feel so strongly that we can help continue to show each other, all of us, everyone on this call, can do our best in a pro bono way to support each other as much as we can do and as often as possible. And what I've found in doing that, I am humbled by the talent and the smarts that I see in these young people, so many millennials starting businesses, to those who have been at it and all these lessons learned. It is so thrilling to play in this great sandbox happening because of that. So I think it is one big, circle from young, all these girls who code and teaching young girls the way on STEM, opening, not STEM for STEM, but because it opens opportunities and doors. And so just promoting that to young and young at heart can make a difference.
I could not agree with you more. I am going to wrap up the panel conversation. Before I do, I want to give all of our panelists, a round of applause, a silent round of applause since we're all on the webinar, but also want to say if you have any final thoughts for the audience that we have on the call, now you have the mic.
I think one thing that we can all do, whether we're aspiring entrepreneurs or already investors or already entrepreneurs, we can act against this ambition that Jean just described to create models of success by actually supporting these women in our purchases that we make, that we pay attention to where, who are the founders of the companies for the products that we buy, the services that we buy. If we are a service provider and you have women clients, do your very best. I recently changed lawyers, and I was really surprised that one of the founding partners of this large law firm took my business. I thought he was going to step aside once I said I wanted to go with the firm. And I asked him why, and he said, I have 3 daughters and only 2 CEOs in my whole portfolio of clients that are women, and I've got to correct that. So he took my business, my tiny business. And it's all those kind of things where in every action, when you're putting together a panel of speakers, in my own company, I have a requirement that every team in the company be gender balanced by at least 30% of whatever gender is low. And so panels and any kind of public forum where there are going to be people on stage or, events in the media, 30% to me seems to be a minimal target to make sure women are represented if you're in a position to organize those things.
I love those comments, and I support those. This is Jean speaking. I think that's critical. And for the reason that we said earlier, but just to underscore it, the lens that is brought to bear by a diverse group, and I'm talking women, but I'm also talking about a wide variety of geographic diversity, ethnic diversity can bring so much to the table, and the research again proves that companies that have that do better. And so as we wake up these men, and many of these men are in these limited partnerships that have millions and billions of dollars to deploy, they are starting to get it. That's good news. But I think if we can keep the research coming that proves that it's valuable to invest behind women-founded companies and groups that support these women founders, that will continue to make a difference and create economic opportunity for many globally. That's the exciting outcome that could be. And so that is where, really creating an impact around financial opportunity for women globally can make a major difference for us throughout the world. And I think that it's really thrilling to continue to talk about it like this. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
This is Trish. Just one comment that I would, one comment and challenge as a last word at, to circle back around where I started. We own almost half the investable wealth, and we could take care of this problem today if we chose to. And I think and so I challenge everyone on this call that is accredited to commit to writing a $10,000 check out to a woman-led company in the next 12 months. And if we would see this, if this would move across the country, we would take care of the problem of women not having access to capital.
Love it. That's great. Thank you for that, Trish.
Yeah, we love that too. I love the comment and a challenge concept. Well, thank you all so much for sharing and giving up your time this afternoon. We are, on behalf of the entire council, grateful for your authenticity, expertise, and so happy that you all are doing exactly what you are doing. We are grateful for your leadership. We've gotten a lot of rah-rahs in the comment section too about the importance of raising the awareness about this topic. So thank you for doing what you are doing. We have learned a lot today and have put some really big ideas on the table, like closing that carried interest loophole, talking about role modeling, and all of us stepping up to play the role and be a part of changing the game. We talk a lot about entrepreneurship in our office as the great equalizer, and equal is a really powerful word. If investments to women-owned businesses were equalized, up from the 6% now to the 50% or more that it should be if you're looking at the gender dynamic, it equates to $25 trillion in potentially untapped economic impact. Champions of women entrepreneurs should be encouraged by the progress made so far. The challenge now is to close the gap and to do so faster for everyone's benefit, as alluded to on this call. Women entrepreneurs and their potential customers and clients everywhere are worth more than the investment that is happening today. The Council is committed to finding and supporting these new strategies and tactics that will increase women's access to greater amounts of and also opportunities for raising capital. It is time to make sure that we are doing everything we can to get women the money that they need when they need it. So here is to closing the gap. And with that, Carla, I will turn it back to you to close us out. One quick note on questions. We will be sure to answer those that have come in online in the chat session, so look for that.
Well, thank you very much, Amanda, and thank you for being an outstanding moderator. And thanks again also to Jules, Julia, Trish, and Jean. Your candor, as Amanda has said, has been very much appreciated, and your insights have just been invaluable. I'm so glad we were able to move from just talking about these issues to the actions and to the recommendations as we got to the end of the call. And we need to get even more ideas on the table and, again, raise the awareness about the availability and the location, frankly, of the resources. I will close with the Council's theory of change. The Council is committed to producing research and engaging key stakeholders in alignment with our four-pillar strategy: data collection, access to capital, access to markets, and job creation and growth. Data is the foundation. The Council seeks to expand the quality and quantity of data on women-owned businesses, and we will continue to make progress in measuring the tide of women's economic impact. And the access to essential business assets, the capital, and the markets continues to be a challenge for way too many women. Our work here focuses on changing the infrastructure and increasing and improving the resources so more women can access the capital they need to start and scale their businesses, and as well as enter new and emerging marketplaces, which we all know will help them grow even more. Our goal is to ensure more women-owned and women-led businesses can scale and thus create more jobs and help the continued growth and expansion of our economy that we have seen over the last 5 years, for example. The work of the Council is grounded in an understanding that women have innovative ideas and that women are leaders. We know women are launching businesses that create value and solve problems, and we believe that women with innovative and scalable ideas should be able to grow their businesses, increase their receipts, and create more jobs. As we've said over and over in this call and before, it is good for business and it is good for the national economy overall. Before I let you all go, I want to take a few minutes to publicly acknowledge Magdala Racine Silva. This is her last official meeting with us, and we are very sad to see her go. Magdala's expertise has been a tremendous asset to the Council, and as has been her leadership as a board member of Women Impacting Public Policy. Magdala, thank you very much for your hard work and commitment to the Council. We will miss your passion, your commitment, and your expertise. But as you know, don't think you will be getting off easy. We will continue to reach out to you as your insights are invaluable to us. And I also know that the team is working on something special for you, so look out for that. And that brings us to the conclusion of our meeting today. Thank you again to all of the Council members and to all of the members of the panel for joining us today. We thank you for your continued engagement and effort to support women entrepreneurs across the country. And again, a very special welcome to both Sherry and Whitney. And to the audience, thank you for taking time out of your Friday to join us. And please stay in touch, especially this Friday, September 11th, where our nation continues to remember and honor those who lost their lives 14 years ago in a terrorist attack. We, too, remember them and their families. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. Please stay engaged. And we'll post our links to a recording of today's program and other resources on these channels and our website as well. And with that, the meeting is officially adjourned at 3:45 Eastern Standard Time.